Detroit struts its stuff with a jam-packed NFL draft. And a busy week in court from Michigan to New York to the Supremes in Washington. Today is Sunday, April 28, 2024, and this is Flashpoint. Hi, welcome to Flashpoint. After a massive week in the city of Detroit, we knew the NFL draft would be big in our football-crazed city, and a record-shattering crowd was there for round one Thursday night. Crowds were so big they had to cut off admissions at the various entry points. Coming up a little later, we'll talk about what a moment it was for the city of Detroit. But we're going to start today by trying to juggle all of the various court proceedings that we were watching this past week. Crazy split-screen viewing on Thursday as Donald Trump's hush money trial was proceeding in New York, just as the Supreme Court in Washington was hearing arguments surrounding his claims of presidential immunity. That was a day after Trump and a number of others were described as unindicted co-conspirators in the Michigan case of the phony electors. All of these matters provoke a ton of questions, and we're going to consider those with former U.S. Attorney Barbara McQuade, the author of a new book on the perils of disinformation in America. And then a little later on this morning, a former Detroit line invites a bunch of kids to a very exclusive dinner. Why? Because Andre Fluellen wants them to dream. It's all today on Flashpoint. Well, after such a busy week on a lot of fronts in court, we're going to start today with Barbara McQuade, the former U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Michigan, who has been a frequent guest of this program, out now with a new book called Attack from Within, which is about the war against disinformation in America, currently number 3, by the way, on the New York Times bestseller list, but so many other things that I want to talk about with her as well. Barbara, it's so great to have you on Flashpoint again. Thanks for the time.
Oh, thanks for having me, Devin.
You bet, and congratulations on the success of the new book. We're going to get to that in just a moment. I want to start, though, with the news that came last week, both Arizona and Michigan kind of making similar news, with understanding that we have a list of unindicted co-conspirators when it comes to trying to overturn the election results in 2020. Donald Trump among them, in both states, of course. But explain to me a little bit about what an unindicted co-conspirator, what that means.
Yes. So to be an unindicted co-conspirator means that this person is not charged in the indictment or the complaint or whatever is the charging instrument, but that the theory of the case is that this person did participate in the conspiracy, meaning that they agreed to work with others to violate the law. There are a number of reasons that someone might be an unindicted co-conspirator. For example, it could be that there's someone who's being charged by another jurisdiction. It could be that someone is cooperating. It could be that scarce resources don't merit charging that person. But it means they're part of a conspiracy. They're just not being charged in this indictment.
Does it mean that they are definitely not going to be charged, or does that remain an open question then?
It does remain an open question. You know, maybe the best example I can give you is the federal election interference case against Donald Trump. Only one person is named in that case by Special Prosecutor Jack Smith, and that's Donald Trump himself. But then it describes 6 other unindicted co-conspirators who, based on their description, it's pretty easy to figure out who they are. It's people like Rudy Giuliani and John Eastman and other lawyers in close confidence of Donald Trump. And it may be that the reason Jack Smith chose not to charge them now is that maybe some are cooperating, but more likely he was seeking to streamline the case so that he could get a trial quickly, and that maybe down the road he would charge them, the unindicted co-conspirators. And so the deadline for charging, if you will, is when the statute of limitations runs out. That's usually 5 years from the date of the commission of the crime.
Let me give some specific attention to the Michigan part of that, and Dana Nessel's announcement, or her office, the announcement that among those co-conspirators is the former Speaker of the Michigan House, Tom Leonard, who, as many Flashpoint viewers know, is a frequent guest on this program. He sent us this statement: "I have been informed that my name was presented in a false and derogatory manner in open court. I would expect the Attorney General to move swiftly as ethically required to correct the testimony, whether intentionally misleading or mistaken." I guess there's a suggestion there, at least from Tom Leonard, Barbara, that maybe this was blurted out and maybe was not really meant to be part of the public record. Is that a possibility?
Well, I think so. I don't know what Mr. Leonard's goals are in making this statement, but I would imagine that from the Attorney General's perspective, her goal is ordinarily to protect the identity of unindicted co-conspirators, and that's why they're typically not mentioned by name in the charging document, because since they're not named, they don't have the opportunity to defend themselves in court. So typically they remain nameless until the trial. In this case, there was actually a hearing where it became necessary to disclose these names. And so these certainly are only accusations. There's been no finding. They're allegations. And so in that context, there is that allegation out there. I can understand why someone might want to defend their own reputation in this way. But, eventually there will be a trial in this case and the facts will come out.
Let's move to what's going on with former President Trump. We know the hush money trial moved on apace. He seems clearly in violation of the gag order on that, though we're left to wonder what the judge exactly can do about it, short of probably don't see him throwing him in jail for contempt of court over it. But I would like to talk about the arguments before the Supreme Court, which I found absolutely fascinating last week. Your take, if you will, on these arguments about whether or not a president has immunity over whatever he might do if it's seen as an act of his office.
Well, what's important, Devin, about this case is the Supreme Court has to decide not only the case that's squarely before them, the case involving Donald Trump, but they know that whatever they decide here is going to set precedent for cases that might come in the future. And so they have to think very carefully about line drawing here. On the one hand, they might want to stop somebody from engaging in obviously illegal activity. The example they always use is ordering SEAL Team 6 to assassinate your political rival. I think everyone would agree, except for Trump lawyers, would agree that that should be criminalized. But on the other hand, there are some legitimate things that a president does, say as the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, that could be perceived as criminal, but that if done in the best interests of the country, should be permitted to do, like President Truman ordering the dropping of the bomb on Japan, or President Obama ordering drone strikes. And so they have to figure out where they're going to draw that line. If done through their public authority in the best interest of the country, that could be one line. Or if the person is acting as the office holder versus an office seeker for re-election, that could be a place to draw the line. And so I think the questions yesterday were designed to help them figure out where they want to draw that line. I think that even some of the more conservative justices, like Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Gorsuch, indicated that they aren't worried about this case. It's a future case that they're worried about. They want to make sure they draw this line in the right place.
Well, and the word came that seemed that Donald Trump's lawyers were dancing a jig, not over it because they think they're going to win the case, but because they got what they needed to delay the case, that this is going to be sent back and it will not end up coming out in a timely fashion in time for the election, which brings me to your book, Attack from Within, which we know the power of disinformation certainly swirls even more in a big election year like this one. Give me your thumbnail thoughts on where we are right now in our ability to discern and battle dis and misinformation in America.
Yeah, I think we find ourselves in a really unique moment in history, and that is we've had the internet and social media now for a decade or two, but we're still kind of going through some growing pains and how we want to think about that and regulate it. We also happen to be going through a particularly polarized time politically. And so together, those two things are kind of a toxic stew for disinformation. And, there's certainly people out there who have their own agendas, who want to promote a particular candidate or who want to sow dissension in American society, who want to confuse people or suppress votes. And so I think as we look ahead to the 2024 election, some of the most important things we can do is make sure we have good information about the upcoming election. I had a chance to speak to the Detroit Economic Club the other day with Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, and I know she's doing a lot of work to sort of pre-bunk some of the disinformation that might be coming along and just educating voters about where they can go to make sure they've got accurate information.
Well, in fact, Barbara, give me the McQuade handbook, what you do to make sure that what you're reading is true and verifiable.
Yeah, so I think there are a few things that we could say are best practices. One, if you see something that appears to be shocking or outrageous or novel in some way, make sure you're finding a second source for that. If a story really is that significant, chances are more than one outlet is going to be reporting it. Look not just at the headline, but also the story. Sometimes some news outlets might have a headline that looks to be a little more sensational, looking for some clicks. And in fact, once you read the story, it doesn't really match up in all of those details. I think those are some important things.
Yeah.
I think as artificial intelligence becomes a new and powerful weapon, I think there is the potential for deceit and manipulation there. And so before we believe our eyes and we see something, a video, or we hear a recording that we believe to be true, we should look to verify that. And then I also think, Devin, we need to look for places where we know there's going to be reliable information. WDIV is a place I would send people for reliable information.
We're grateful.
But for voting, our Secretary of State's website, and I also love to send people to the League of Women Voters,
Yep.
which is a nonpartisan organization designed to educate voters.
One of my favorite places to send folks as well. Barbara, it is always good to have you on the program. Congratulations on the book. Continued success with that, and hope we'll have you back on the program again real soon.
Thanks so much, Devin.
You bet. Barbara McQuade. We come back, we'll talk about Detroit and the NFL draft. This is Flashpoint on Local 4. Well, what a week it has been for the city of Detroit, setting records for NFL draft attendance and shining like a diamond really for the whole world as it was watching what was happening in the Motor City. And my heart sang when I looked at the Free Press one day last week and again saw the byline of one John Gallagher, the former writer and columnist for the Free Press, who spent so much time writing about Detroit development and attempts at redevelopment, we should also note. And your take on the city was so welcome. John, it's great to have you back on the program again.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, give me you were pretty buoyant about what you saw.
Well, it's just that so much great stuff has happened here since the Super Bowl, even 18 years ago. I mean, we forget that how much demolition we did before the Super Bowl in 2006, because we were afraid people were going to look at Detroit and see nothing but blight, and we'd have this really negative image coming away from the Super Bowl. So we had this frenzy of demolition and painting over eyesores and almost apologizing. And of course it worked out, but now we don't need to do that because the dinosaur buildings downtown have been occupied. I mean, we forget the Book Cadillac wasn't occupied at that point.
That's right. I mean, that's how long ago it was.
Yeah, we've built out the Riverwalk. The city's finances have been straightened out through the bankruptcy. We built the Q line. We've built huge amounts of new housing all over the place. We have more new hotels going up than I can count sometimes. You know, the whole entrepreneurial ecosystem has been built out from nothing in 20 years. And so I just think it's a totally different vibe in the city now. And, you know, no one's sort of looking over their shoulder and worried about what all these visitors are going to see when they come for the draft.
It's funny, I was talking to the mayor last week, and he remembered driving around with Roger Penske, trying to figure out which things needed to be boarded up, painted up, covered up, so that we didn't disappoint all the company that came. But the other thing that seemed to be the spirit of the city seemed so welcoming and so ready to embrace this. And I guess we have become a place now that really should not shy away from any big event. And we've done Super Bowls, Final Four. We do parades and fireworks, of course, every year. I mean, it's kind of becoming maybe our calling card a little bit.
Right. And you know, when I saw the crowds on TV, we all knew it was going to be a big deal, but I had no concept.
I got goosebumps watching that sweeping shot, right, of Campus Martius.
Shot and just the aerial images of the city and the skyline and the riverfront. It's just amazing.
What do you think the difference makers have really been then? Because I mentioned you used to write an awful lot about things that just didn't go anywhere, didn't work out.
Well, I would say three things. First, we did figure out how to do stuff. So, I mean, we used to have all these programs. We built the Ren Center that didn't create a renaissance. You know, we had, we had the empowerment zones in the 90s that dumped a lot of money in the city, didn't leave a trace. We figured out how, what programs work, what doesn't work, how to do this. So we could turn around the convention center, Huntington Place. We could build the Riverwalk. We could build the Q line. We figured out how to do stuff. Second, we had a really good cadre of leaders across every field: philanthropy, Mary Nolan, Rapson, Sue Mosey, George Jackson, Malik Yakini, Matt Cullen, Dan Gilbert. I mean, huge numbers of really dedicated people. And finally, I think that the racial animosity that used to divide this whole community is somewhat better than it used to be. I don't want to oversell that, but,
sure.
But you just don't hear the kinds of stuff people used to say about Detroit. Like, I've never been in this city in 30 years and I'm never going to be. Or the stuff Brooks Patterson used to say about the city. You don't hear that anymore.
No, we don't.
Instead, you hear people saying, I can't wait to get downtown and see the Riverwalk and all the new restaurants and everything.
Yeah.
So I think just we've figured things out and we've made a lot of progress and we had a lot of good people in place.
The other thing that we may have all underestimated was how important the bankruptcy was to get a lot of weight off of the backs. And I don't want to undersell the hardships that many people had, because a lot of people did take a pretty stiff haircut when it came, pensions and things like that. But getting that debt off of Detroit's back, maybe we missed how important that was going to be in being able to walk forward. Right, I think so. And when you think when we entered the bankruptcy, it was going to be sell the artwork of the DIA, cut the pensions to the bone, raise taxes, give us our money. And of course, none of that happened. It was an amazing process. And I think that, it's, as you said, it's one of the things that has paid dividends over and over. I think that we start to look around now. One of the things that used to drive me crazy was that a lot of what we called growth in downtown was actually cannibalism from somewhere else. We would take jobs from Livonia rather than taking jobs from Phoenix or Dallas and moving them to Detroit. And I'm wondering now your thoughts about, so the RenCen, we're moving General Motors headquarters and employees up to the new Hudson's site building, leaving this hulking structure. I wonder what you think. That feels like another round of cannibalism to me. Well, yeah, there's some of that. But, I think if I want to design the future of the RenCen, I'd rather have Bedrock, Dan Gilbert's Bedrock, do it than GM, because Bedrock knows how to do this. And I just think that there's a lot of upside potential for the RenCen as housing, as something like that. And I think over time that will work itself out. But I just think that we have so much homegrown stuff now. All the entrepreneurs, you go to a place like New Lab next to the train station, Ford's about to reopen the train station. Right. We've got hundreds of these entrepreneurs sort of sprouting up all over. To me, it feels much more organic, and it's not just moving folks from the suburbs, from one downtown building to another. It's much more organic growth than that. Really nice. John, the author of so many books, so many columns and pieces on everything that's happened in Detroit over the years. Again, it was so good to see your byline again. Thank you. Great to have you back on the program. Thank you, Devin. You bet. We come back, former Detroit Lion Andre Fluellen on trying to set the example for Detroit youth. This is Flashpoint on Local 4. Well, I read last week about former Detroit Lion Andre Fluellen taking a bunch of kids to dinner at Prime and Proper, one of the most expensive, exclusive restaurants in downtown Detroit. I thought that's nice. And then I kept reading and I realized it was much more than nice. And I am very happy to have the Eternal Lion, because Andre Fluellen, I think you said you signed and were released about 10 times, right?
Well, look, I like saying it like this. I was cut 9 times, but signed 10 contracts.
That's right.
So I won,
so
okay? All right, I'm a winner in this thing.
I love it. This is such a fascinating idea to me. You're going to take this group, about 2 weeks from now, you're going to take this group of young people to Prime and Proper, but it's more than just a nice dinner. Explain what it is that you're trying to do.
So I tell a story, and I tell the story to my group that I mentored. So taking a group of 20 boys and 20 girls to Prime and Proper. I mean, fancy, right?
Yes.
And I just remember growing up, and my dad used to take me every weekend to Buckhead, Atlanta, Georgia. This is the ritziest part of town.
That's right.
He used to let me look at all the $1 million houses, and he would say to me, look me right in my eyes, he would say, Dre, this is how you're going to live, over and over again. And I believe that he impressed my mind that this is how I was going to live. And golly, I grew up and this is how I live now. And so I'm just trying to do the same thing by giving them an experience. And I'm telling them all the time, hey, this is how you're going to live. And so that's really the purpose behind why I'm doing this dinner.
It obviously stayed with you your whole life, these lessons. When you look, it's really difficult to dream about something that you never see, though, right?
Absolutely.
You get limited by your own surroundings.
And you can't taste something that you've never tasted either. That's right. Okay?
Yes.
So, and that's the thing. So it's not just the restaurant. I mean, we could have gone to Applebee's or Golden Corral. We would have had a great time. It would have been fantastic, but it wouldn't have been an experience. It wouldn't have been something that triggered their mind to be, hey, this is what I want in life. Maybe I can reach out to this. Maybe I can just follow the things that I've been mentored with for the past 2 years that Andre has been telling us about. Maybe these things can happen because they've happened with him. So if he can do it, then guess what? I can do it.
Unfortunately, in some neighborhoods, the role models, when kids look around and they see somebody driving a really nice car or somebody who seems to have a lot of money, they haven't really come into it in the way that you and I want them to, and they really aren't the best role models. Trying to separate having this the right way and the wrong way is also, I think, important to you.
That's why it's so important that it's me. Not to sound egotistical, but seriously, it's a guy, and I tell people this all the time, like, you're not looking at a guy that's playing with football money. I mean, I'll tell the kids, I was embezzled for almost everything that I owned, okay?
I heard you say that this past week.
Got it back by using the same principles in life and in business. The same thing that I'm teaching them, I got it back even more. I'm more successful now than I was playing football. So they need to see that this isn't just a football player. This is a regular guy with a regular mind that uses some specific principles to be successful, to take them to prime and proper.
And I've got to believe that you are finding a hunger in young people for people like you, for role models, for mentors.
You know, the coolest thing happened. So I mentored my group this past Tuesday, and I finally broke the news of what I'm doing with them. So I said, all right, and then I mentored the boys. I said, all right, boys, I'm taking you guys to prime and proper. They're like, what's that? So I pulled it up. They're like, oh my God, we're going to this place? And I said, so not only that though, when I told them, I said, hey, we're taking the girls too. I said, now we have to be gentlemen. You have to dress the part. I said, you open the doors for the young ladies. And they said, oh, we pull out the chairs and put the napkins on. I said, yes, you should have seen how their pride rose up when I told them that they had to be gentlemen. So there's something in there which surprised me when every young man, they knew that they had a responsibility to treat those young ladies like queens. I love that part of it.
That's wild. And what's the response of the young ladies so far who we're getting to hear that they're going to be a part of this too?
So I don't mentor the young ladies. There's two WNBA players that mentor them. So I haven't even seen their response yet. So it's going to be a surprise for me too.
What do you really, and then in the end, then what's the next step? They've had this great dinner, then how do you then infect them with the rest of what you know?
Beautiful question. So once this is over with, they always stay connected with me. And I want that all the time. I must still have some high schoolers who I mentored 3 or 4 years ago. They stay connected with me. They ask me questions about life. And also, I want this to be a village. Like, yes, I am paying for it. And look, I told them, I said, hey, you guys are expensive, okay? But there is a village, and we are having community partners and business partners that are chipping in and sponsoring some of the students, because I believe that if we can keep doing this, we can have some of these business leaders to come and pull them around, and they can say, okay, maybe I can be on the news, or maybe I can own a company. So that's why.
I love it. We need more people like you, Andre Fluellen. That's really great, and good luck with this. I can't wait to hear how it all turns out.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for being here, and that's going to do it for us this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Meet the Press coming your way next. Hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time right back here for Flashpoint.